The $2 plea. The city was dark, filled with neon lights and falling rain. People hurried along the wet streets, holding umbrellas, chasing work, chasing sleep, chasing their own worries. Nobody looked down at the corner, where a small figure sat in the shadows. She was an alien woman, skin pale and eyes glowing faintly in the light of the signs. Her clothes were torn, her hands trembling from the cold. In her palm she held a few coins, only 2 credits, the last of everything she owned. Her voice was soft but clear. "I only have 2 credits, human, please. Let me sleep in a warm bed just for one night." But the crowd passed her like she was invisible. Some humans laughed, some turned their faces away, some whispered cruel words. Nobody stopped, nobody cared. She lowered her head, her body shaking, but she did not cry. She was proud even in the dust of the street. She would never beg for food, never crawl, never throw away her last piece of dignity. All she asked for was a place to rest, a place to breathe. Hours passed, the rain grew colder. The city lights flashed in red and blue. Machines hummed, engines roared. She pressed the 2 credits against her chest like they were gold. Her lips moved in her own language, whispering a prayer. It was a prayer for her husband, a soldier who never returned, a widow on a human world. Lost and forgotten, a shadow fell over her. She looked up and saw a man, tall but thin, clothes covered in oil and dirt. He was a mechanic, just another worker from the factories at the edge of the city. His eyes were tired, his shoulders heavy. Life had beaten him many times, but he was still standing. For a moment he only stared at her. The alien's glowing eyes met his, and in that look there was no begging, no trick. Only pain and silence. Something in that silence stopped him. He felt like he had seen those eyes before, in the mirror of his own life. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice rough. She lifted the 2 credits with shaking fingers. "Please, human, a warm bed. One night, nothing more." Her words were plain without lies. The mechanic sighed, looking around. People were watching him, some whispering, some smirking. Why should he care? She was not his problem. He had little money, little space, and even less trust, but still, he could not walk away. He knew what cold streets felt like. He knew the taste of being unwanted, and something deep inside whispered, "Help her." He reached out his hand, slow and unsure. She hesitated, then placed the coins in his palm. Her fingers were cold like ice. He closed his fist around them, then turned without a word. "Follow me," he said. The alien widow stood weak but steady and followed him into the rain. The streets grew narrow, the lights fewer, until they reached a small building with broken walls and rusty doors. Inside was his room. It was small, 1 bed, 1 chair, 1 broken heater, and the smell of oil and iron. Not much, not warm, but it was shelter. She looked around, her eyes calm but filled with a strange gratitude. He dropped the 2 credits on the table, shaking his head. "They mean nothing," he muttered. "Keep them." But she shook her head. "No, human, I pay what I can. I keep my word." Her voice was soft but firm. The mechanic studied her for a moment, then sat heavily in the chair. He did not ask questions, not yet. She lay down carefully on the edge of the bed, her body stiff as if she was afraid to take too much space. Her hands clutched a small piece of metal. Hidden under her sleeve, she closed her eyes, whispering again in her alien tongue. A prayer, a memory, a secret. The man watched her from the chair. He wanted to believe she was only a lost widow. Nothing more. But the way she held that piece of metal, the way her words shook the air, it was something more. He did not know it yet, but this night, this choice, would drag him into a story far greater than his own life. The rain outside grew heavier. The city never slept, but inside that small room, silence filled the air. 2 strangers, human and alien, sat under the same roof, one searching for warmth, the other searching for meaning, and both unaware that their paths had just changed forever. The alien woman whispered once more, "I only had 2 credits, human, but maybe tonight I found more than a bed." The night was quiet inside the small room. The rain outside kept falling, but here, the air was heavy with silence. The mechanic sat in his chair, eyes half closed, but he did not sleep. Across from him, the alien widow lay on the bed, curled tightly, as if the world might take it from her at any moment. She looked peaceful, but her hands betrayed her, even in sleep. Her fingers gripped something small and sharp, hidden under the cloth of her sleeve. The man leaned forward, watching, curiosity gnawing at him. He had seen soldiers carry tokens like that, pieces of metal from war, medals or fragments, but this one felt different, heavier, almost alive. Her lips moved, whispering words in a strange alien tongue. The sound was soft, musical, yet broken by pain. The mechanic frowned, unable to understand, but one word came again and again, sharp as a knife: Kalir. He wondered if it was a name, a place, or a memory. Suddenly her body shook, her eyes opened wide. Glowing faintly in the dark, she sat up, breathing hard, sweat running down her face. The shard of metal in her hand glimmered. Catching the neon light through the cracked window, the man spoke, his voice calm but firm. "You talk in your sleep, alien. Who is Kalir?" For a moment she said nothing. Her eyes cold as glass, then she lowered her gaze, clutching the shard to her chest. "You should not ask, human. It is not your war." Her words cut the air, strong but also trembling. The mechanic leaned back, crossing his arms. "Maybe not my war, but you brought it into my room," he said. He pointed to the metal piece in her hands. "That is no coin, no toy. What is it?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Danger, that is what it is. Danger for me, danger for you. For anyone who sees it." Her voice grew softer. "My husband died because of this." The man froze. He had guessed she was a widow, but now the truth pressed against him like the weight of the rain. She touched the shard gently, as if it was both weapon and memory. "He found it on the battlefield. He said it was older than humans. Older than any of us." Her voice shook, but she continued. "He wanted to give it to the council, but before he could, men came, humans. They killed him, they hunted me, I ran, I hid, until I had nothing left but 2 credits. The mechanic listened, his jaw tight. He did not know if her words were truth or lies, but the fear in her eyes was real. The scars on her hands were real, and the shard, its strange glow, was real, too real. "Why tell me?" he asked finally. She looked at him, and in that moment her pride cracked. "Because now you are part of it. Human, they saw me enter this place. They will come. They will not let me go." Her words sank into the walls like knives. The mechanic felt his stomach twist. He had only wanted to give her a bed. One night, nothing more, but now, the night was no longer simple. He stood pacing the small room. His life had always been simple. Work, sleep, survive. No wars, no secrets, no aliens with glowing eyes. Yet here she was, sitting on his bed, carrying danger in her hands, and for reasons he could not explain. He did not throw her out. "You should run," he said finally. "Before they find you here, leave before it is too late." But she shook her head slowly. "They will follow. No matter where I run, I cannot throw away what my husband died for." Her words pulled at something inside him, something buried for years. He remembered nights when he too had nothing, when no one cared if he lived or died. He remembered the silence of being invisible, and he hated the thought of leaving her to the same fate. He turned to the window, looking out into the rain-soaked streets. Dark figures moved under the lamps, shadows that did not belong to ordinary workers. Men in long coats standing still, watching, waiting. His chest tightened. "They are already here," he whispered. The alien widow rose from the bed, her face pale but her eyes burning bright. She tucked the shard close to her heart. "We have little time, human, but if you help me, maybe we both live." The mechanic closed his eyes, breathing slow. He had no reason to trust her, no reason to risk his life, and yet, when he opened his eyes again, he found himself nodding. "Fine," he said, voice low. "But if I die because of you, alien, I will haunt you in the next life." For the first time, her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Better than dying alone," she whispered. Outside, the shadows closed in. The hunt had begun. Inside, 2 strangers prepared for a fight they did not choose, and the secret of the shard waited, heavy, glowing, alive with a truth that could break worlds. The city did not sleep. Engines roared, neon lights blinked, and rain washed over broken streets. But inside the small room, time had slowed. The mechanic and the alien widow stood in silence, both listening to the quiet footsteps outside. The man walked to the window, keeping his body low. Through the cracked glass he saw them, 3 figures in long coats, standing near the corner, their faces hidden, their boots still in the water. They were not drunk workers, not wandering merchants. They stood too straight, too sharp, too silent. "They are not here for me," the mechanic whispered. His hands trembled as he turned to her. "They are here for you," the alien widow nodded, her eyes calm but her breathing fast. "They never stop, human. They followed me across districts. Across streets, always near, always watching. Her hand pressed against the shard hidden under her sleeve. If they catch me, they will take this, and then my husband's death will mean nothing. The mechanic cursed under his breath. He had survived the city by staying invisible, by avoiding trouble. Now trouble had walked straight into his home. He grabbed his jacket, pulling it tight. We cannot stay here. They already know. The alien widow stood, her thin body shaking but her eyes burning. Then where do we go? He hesitated, then muttered, down into the old tunnels. No one uses them anymore. The door creaked as he unlocked it. The smell of rust and oil filling the hall. The rain outside hit his face like cold knives. The woman followed close, her steps soft, almost soundless. Together they slipped into the alley, keeping to the shadows. But the hunters noticed one lifted his head, eyes glowing faint red under the hood. He raised a hand and the other two began to move. Silent, fast, like predators, the mechanic pulled the widow into a side street. Run, he hissed. They darted through the maze of alleys, past broken walls and flickering lamps. The city stretched above them like a cage of light and steel. Every corner felt like a trap. Every shadow felt alive. The widow's breath came quick, her hand gripping the shard tight. You should not help me, human. They will kill you too, she gasped. The mechanic shot her a hard look. Too late for that, alien. We're in this together now. They reached a rusted gate, half broken, leading to a stairwell sinking into darkness. This way, the mechanic whispered. They rushed down the stairs, the sound of their boots echoing against the walls. The tunnel smelled of damp stone and old smoke. Faded posters of wars long-ended clung to the walls, peeling away, but the hunters followed. Their footsteps above, then on the stairs, slow and steady. The mechanic's heart pounded. We cannot outrun them forever, he muttered. The widow touched the shard, her face pale but determined. Then we do not run. Not always, he stared at her. You carry danger. Alien, what is that thing really? She lifted the shard and for a moment the tunnel lit with a strange glow. It was not only metal, it was alive, pulsing faintly. Like a heartbeat, her voice shook. My husband said it was a piece of something greater, something buried under this world before humans came. The mechanic stepped back, eyes wide. You mean it's not just a relic? She nodded. It can change everything, power, memory. Even the war between species, her voice dropped lower. That is why they killed him. That is why they hunt me. The sound of footsteps grew closer, echoing like drums in the stone halls. The mechanic clenched his fists, his whole life flashing in his mind. He had wanted nothing but silence to survive one day after another. Now he was standing next to an alien widow, holding a secret that could burn the galaxy. He felt fear, but also something else. A spark, a reason. The widow looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. You should leave me, human. Take your life back before it is too late. But he shook his head, jaw tight. Maybe I had no life to begin with. Maybe this is the first thing that matters. The hunter's shadows stretched down the stairs, their boots striking the stone with cold rhythm. The mechanic pulled a wrench from his jacket, the only weapon he had. The widow stood beside him, clutching the shard, her eyes glowing faint in the dark. Together they waited, breath-sharp, hearts pounding. The city above carried on, blind to the chase below, but in the tunnels, under neon rain and broken stone, two strangers stood against the coming storm. One human, one alien, both caught in a web far larger than themselves. And as the hunters closed in, the first real fight began. The tunnels shook with echoes. Heavy footsteps came closer, each one sharp and certain. The mechanic tightened his grip on the old wrench. The alien widow pressed the glowing shard to her chest, her breath fast but steady. The hunters entered the stairwell, their long coats brushing the walls. 3 shadows against the dim light. Moving slow but sure, they did not rush. They did not shout, they moved like predators, certain the prey had nowhere to run. The mechanic's heart pounded, his mind screamed at him to leave, to run alone, to save himself, but his feet stayed firm. He had chosen this path the moment he let her into his room. Now there was no way back. The widow looked at him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. You do not have to stay, human, they want me. Not you, she whispered. But the mechanic shook his head, jaw tight. You think they'll let me live if I hand you over? No, alien, if I betray you, I'm already dead. The hunters stepped into the tunnel, faces still hidden by shadows. One raised a hand, pointing at the woman. The voice that came was cold and without emotion. Give her to us, human, step aside, and your life will remain your own. The mechanic almost laughed. He saw the promise in those words, but also the lie hidden under them. Men like these did not spare lives, they erased problems. And he had become a problem the moment he opened his door. The widow clutched the shard tighter, her voice low but firm. "If you give me up, human, maybe they will let you live." Her eyes searched his face. "Do you trust me enough to fight, or will you choose survival?" The mechanic stared at her. The choice weighed heavy on his chest. He thought of his empty life, his long days in the factory, the endless silence. Then he thought of her, proud even in the dust, holding 2 credits with dignity. Something inside him shifted. "I don't trust you," he admitted, voice rough. "But I trust the way you refuse to break." The hunters moved closer, their boots loud now. The mechanic swung the wrench in warning. "Come any closer, and I'll smash your skulls," he growled. But the hunters did not fear. One reached inside his coat, pulling free a weapon that glowed faint blue. The widow stepped forward, her shard humming in her hands. She pressed it against the wall of the tunnel, and suddenly the stone vibrated. Lines of light spread across the old bricks, forming strange alien symbols. The hunters froze for a moment. Uncertain, the mechanic stared, his mouth dry. "What in hell is that thing?" Her voice trembled but stayed strong. "A map, a guide, maybe even a weapon. My husband told me it reacts to danger. It shows the way forward." The wall shifted, a section sliding open with a grinding sound. Behind it lay a dark passage. Untouched by time, she looked at him quickly. "Now we run." The mechanic grabbed her arm, pulling her through the opening. The hunters shouted, their cold voices breaking into anger. Blue light flashed as they fired their weapons. Bolts of energy struck the walls, stone bursting into dust. But the 2 had already slipped inside. The wall closing behind them, darkness swallowed them. Only the shard's faint glow lit their path. The widow stumbled, leaning against the rough stone. The mechanic steadied her, though his own chest burned with fear. "What are we walking into, alien?" he asked, voice low. She looked at him, her face pale. Into secrets humans were never meant to see. They moved deeper, the sound of their hunters fading behind. The passage twisted like a maze, carved long before humans built their city above. Strange symbols marked the walls, glowing faintly as the shard drew near. The air smelled of dust and age. Every step felt like walking into the heart of something forbidden. The widow whispered, "My husband said this world is not what humans believe. Under the streets lie ruins older than any starship, older than our wars, older than us all." Her words made the mechanic's skin crawl. He was only a worker, a man of machines and bolts. But now he was standing inside something that felt like the bones of gods. They stopped at a wide chamber, its roof high, its walls carved with spirals of light. In the center stood a broken pillar, and at its heart a hollow space shaped like the shard. The widow's hands shook as she held the glowing piece. "This is what they fear, human, if the shard is placed here. It may awaken what sleeps below." The mechanic stared, torn between awe and dread. "And what happens if it awakens?" She met his eyes, her voice barely a whisper. "Either salvation or the end." Silence filled the chamber, heavy and unbroken. The mechanic felt the weight of betrayal pressing on him again. He could still walk away, leave her with the shard, return to his life of machines. But when he looked into her eyes, he knew he would not. Her fight had become his, her danger his own. Flight had brought them here, but betrayal would not carry him back. Behind them, distant echoes rose. The hunters had found another way in. The mechanic raised his wrench, the widow lifted the shard. In the heart of the ruins, under the city of neon rain, the true battle was about to begin. The chamber was vast and silent. The walls glowed faintly with symbols no human had ever written. The mechanic stood with his wrench raised, his breath loud in the empty air. The alien widow held the shard close, her glowing eyes fixed on the hollow in the pillar. The hunter's footsteps echoed from the tunnels, growing louder. The widow's hands shook as she lifted the shard. "This is the place, human. My husband told me the shard belongs here," she whispered. Her voice trembled with fear and hope. The mechanic frowned. "You put it in there. What happens?" The widow looked at him, her lips pressed tight. "I don't know." He died before he could finish his words, only that it holds truth. Truth humans should never own. The hunters entered the chamber, their long coats dripping with rainwater, weapons glowing blue in their hands. One pointed at the widow, his voice sharp and cold. "Step away from the relic, alien. Give it to us, human. You can still live if you walk now." The mechanic almost laughed, his heart pounding. They had repeated the same promise before. Empty and false. He shook his head, tightening his grip on the wrench. "You'll have to kill me first," the widow stared at him. Surprised, he did not know why he said it. Maybe it was anger, maybe pride, maybe something more, but the words came like fire. And he did not take them back. The hunters moved closer. Spreading out, careful but certain, the widow stepped toward the pillar. Her voice rose in her alien tongue, sharp and heavy like a prayer. The shard glowed brighter, pulsing like a living heart. The mechanic felt the ground tremble beneath his boots. Dust fell from the roof. The symbols on the walls lit one by one. The hunters froze for a moment. Their weapons shaking. "What is she doing?" One hissed, but none of them dared shoot, not yet. The widow pressed the shard into the hollow. A deep sound filled the chamber. Not a sound of machines, but of something older. The walls pulsed with light. Streams of energy flowing through the stone like rivers. The pillar cracked, releasing a soft golden mist. The shard melted into the stone, no longer a piece of metal, but a part of something far greater. The mechanic shielded his eyes as the glow filled the chamber. Shapes appeared in the air. Images. Memories, voices, not human, not alien, but something beyond, a history carved in light. He saw armies marching across stars, cities rising and falling like waves. He saw a race long gone, beings of light and stone, building, ruling, vanishing, and in their fall they left behind fragments, shards of power scattered across worlds. The widow gasped, her voice breaking. "My husband was right. It is not a weapon. It is memory. It is truth." The mechanic's chest tightened. The truth was too much. The chamber showed him wars before humans. Wars before her kind, the hunters shouted, shielding their faces. "This is forbidden. Shut it down. Stop it now." But the widow stood tall, her face lit by the glow. "No, this must be seen. All must know." Her voice rang with pride, stronger than before. The mechanic looked at her and saw not a beggar, not a widow, but a survivor carrying the weight of worlds. The hunters moved, firing their weapons. Blue bolts cut across the chamber, striking the walls. Stone shattered. Symbols flickered, the light faltered. The mechanic roared, swinging his wrench. He struck one hunter across the jaw, the crack of bone loud in the air. The man fell, weapon clattering to the ground. The other two advanced, their eyes burning with rage. The widow raised her hands, the pillar behind her shining brighter. Golden energy spread from the cracks. Forming a barrier of light, the shots bounced off, striking harmlessly into the air. The mechanic stumbled back. "Breathing hard, what is happening?" he shouted. The widow's voice shook but carried strength. "The shard has joined its source. It will not allow lies. It shows what was hidden, what was stolen." The chamber filled with visions again. Humans arriving on this world, digging, hiding the ruins, taking pieces of the old race for themselves, building weapons, building power. The mechanic's eyes widened. They knew. Humans knew all along. The widow nodded, tears shining in her glowing eyes. "That is why they killed him. Because truth is more dangerous than any weapon." Her words burned into the mechanic's heart. The hunters screamed, firing again and again. But the barrier held, stronger with every breath. The pillar cracked open fully, revealing a core of golden stone. It pulsed like a star, alive, ancient, awake. The widow's body trembled, her voice a whisper. "It is awake now, human, and it will choose who is worthy." The mechanic stared at her, at the light, at the broken hunters crawling back in fear. He felt the choice press on his chest like a mountain, to walk away, return to silence, or to stand and hold the truth with her. For the first time in years, he felt alive. He lifted his wrench, standing at her side. "Then let it choose us," he whispered. The golden light burst outward, shaking the chamber. The hunters screamed as they were thrown into the darkness. The widow and the mechanic stood firm. Bathed in truth, the relic had revealed itself. But its judgment had only begun. The chamber shook like a living beast. Golden light poured from the cracked pillar, racing across the walls like fire. The mechanic stood with his wrench raised, his body tense, his eyes wide. The alien widow held her ground, her glowing eyes fixed on the storm of energy. The hunters screamed as they staggered to their feet. Their weapons burned in their hands, spitting blue sparks that could not pierce the barrier of light. Fear showed on their faces now, not confidence, not control. They had hunted her through the streets, but here, they were only shadows fighting against something greater. The mechanic looked at the widow, his voice low. "What happens now?" She shook her head, her voice trembling. "The relic is awake. It tests us. It waits to see if we are worthy." The ground split beneath them, dust falling from the high roof. Symbols carved in the stone glowed brighter, spinning in circles like wheels of fire. The widow clutched her chest, her body shaking. "It feels me, it sees me. It knows what I carry," she whispered. Her voice broke as tears filled her eyes. "It feels my husband's death, it feels my fear, but also my hope." The mechanic reached for her arm, steadying her. The touch was rough but steady. "You are not alone," he said firmly. For a moment she looked at him, surprised, and in her glowing eyes he saw something new. Not just fear, not just grief, but trust beginning to bloom. The hunters roared, breaking through their fear. They charged, weapons raised, their coats flaring in the golden light. The mechanic met them head-on, swinging his wrench with all his strength. Metal crashed against metal, sparks bursting. One hunter struck his shoulder, pain flaring, but he did not fall. The widow lifted her hands. The pillar behind her, blazing like a sun, golden streams leapt from her fingers, striking the hunters with waves of force. They screamed, their bodies thrown back against the stone. The chamber roared with sound, the relic alive, burning, choosing. The mechanic fell to one knee, blood dripping down his arm. The widow rushed to him, her voice sharp with worry. "You are hurt." "Human," but he shook his head, forcing himself up. "I am still here, alien, and I will not fall while you stand." The hunters crawled up again, their faces twisted with rage. They were broken but not defeated. One raised his weapon and fired. The shot cut through the golden light, striking near the widow's feet. The blast shook her, the shard's energy flickering. The mechanic stepped in front of her, his body shielding hers. The blast grazed his side, pain tearing through him. He gritted his teeth but did not move. Her voice broke as she shouted, "Why protect me? You owe me nothing." He turned his head, his face pale but his eyes fierce. "Because no one ever protected me. Not once, not ever," he growled. "And I will not let them take you. Not while I can stand." The widow's heart shook. She had run from death, from hunters, from truth. She had trusted no one since her husband's fall. But this human, tired and broken, stood in fire for her. The relic pulsed brighter, as if it felt the bond. The chamber walls sang with energy, golden waves flowing faster. The hunters made one last charge. Desperate and wild, the mechanic swung his wrench, breaking one weapon. The widow raised her hands, golden light bursting like a storm. Together they struck, man and alien, steel and truth. The hunters fell to the ground, their bodies broken, their voices silent. Silence filled the chamber once more. Only the golden light remained. Calm now, steady. The pillar's cracks sealed, the shard gone, merged forever. The widow fell to her knees, her breath ragged. The mechanic dropped beside her, his chest burning with pain. They sat together in the golden glow. Two strangers, two survivors, their clothes torn, their bodies bruised but alive. The widow turned her head, her voice soft. "You fought for me when you could have left." The mechanic laughed weakly. "Maybe I was tired of running from life," he whispered. The relic's light dimmed to a gentle glow. Symbols faded back into stone, but the air still carried power. The widow reached for his hand, trembling but certain, for the first time human. "I believe I am not alone," he squeezed her hand. "Rough and strong for the first time, alien. I feel like I belong." Above them, the city still roared with neon and rain. But deep below, in the heart of ancient stone, a bond had been forged in fire, a trust that neither war nor hunters could break. And though they did not yet know it, this trust would be the key to what came next. The chamber was quiet now. The golden glow had faded into soft lines on the stone. The hunters lay broken and silent on the floor, their weapons shattered, their bodies motionless. Only the mechanic and the alien widow remained standing, bruised, bloodied, but alive. The mechanic leaned against the wall, holding his wounded side. His breath was heavy, his strength almost gone. The widow knelt beside him, her glowing eyes soft with concern. "You bleed too much, human, you gave too much," she whispered. But he forced a weak laugh. "I am still breathing, alien. That's enough." The chamber's air shifted, a warm wind stirring from the pillar. It was as if the relic itself spoke without words. The walls shimmered with faint light, symbols glowing one last time before sinking back into silence. The widow looked at the pillar, her voice trembling. "It has chosen us. Human, not them, not the hunters, us." The mechanic frowned. "I don't want power, I don't want secrets. I just wanted to live my life." She shook her head gently. "You wanted nothing, human, but life gave you more. It gave you me. Her words struck him deeper than the wounds. He looked at her. Really looked. No longer just an alien widow with nothing but 2 credits. But a survivor who had carried truth through fire. She had asked for only a bed, but had given him something far greater in return. Above them, faint echoes of the city trembled through the stone. The world outside was still cruel, still broken. Humans would still hunt. Wars would still burn, but in this chamber, something had changed. The mechanic felt it in his bones. The widow felt it in her heart. She touched his arm carefully. Her hand warm despite her trembling fingers. You should have left me that first night, human. But you did not, her voice cracked softly. You gave me a roof, a chance, a fight, hope. No human ever gave me that before. The mechanic closed his eyes. His voice low. I almost did walk away more than once. But every time I looked at you, I saw myself. Broken, unwanted, invisible. He opened his eyes again, fierce and tired but alive. And I couldn't let the world break you the way it broke me. Silence fell between them. Not heavy, but gentle. The kind of silence that speaks louder than words. The widow lowered her head. Her voice barely a whisper. I only had 2 credits. Human, I asked for a bed, nothing more. But you gave me more than a bed. Tears glimmered in her glowing eyes. You gave me a reason to keep breathing. The mechanic felt something shift in his chest. Something long buried, something he thought had died. He reached out, his rough hand trembling. He touched her shoulder, steady and sure. You don't need 2 credits anymore, he whispered. Stay, not just in my room, but in my life. The widow froze. Her lips parting in shock, her eyes widened. And for the first time since her husband's death, she allowed herself to breathe without fear. Her voice shook. You mean it? Even after this? After all the danger I brought you? He gave a crooked smile. Especially after this, alien. If we survive this together, we can survive anything. She lowered her head, and for the first time, she smiled. Not the small, sharp smile of defense, but a real one, soft and alive. She whispered back. Then I will stay, human, not for a night, but as long as you will have me. The chamber's glow dimmed completely. The relic silent once more, its truth sealed in their hearts. The hunters would not rise again, but others would come. The city above would never stop watching. Yet neither of them felt alone anymore. The mechanic stood weak but steady. He offered his hand, and the widow took it. Together they walked out of the chamber, through the old tunnels into the night of the city. Rain still fell, neon still burned. The world was still hard and unkind. But the 2 of them moved through it side by side. And for the first time in years, the mechanic felt alive. And for the first time since loss, the widow felt safe. She whispered again as they stepped into the light of the streets. I only had 2 credits, human, and now I have a home. He looked at her. Eyes tired but warm. You have me, he said simply. The night carried on, but their story, forged in shadows and fire, was only beginning.